one's coming to save you. So what are you gonna do about it? Raw Minds on men's mental health. Hosted by Erick. For the ones we never meet.
Listen, most men out there are lost when it comes to relationships. No guidance, no real conversation, just pain, breakups, silence, and trying to figure it out alone. This podcast exists for that reason. My name's Erick, and this is Raw Minds, and this is where we talk about the stuff most people avoid: mental health, pain, growth, truth. And today we're getting into something every man deals with, but almost nobody talks about properly: relationships. We've got Mr. J in the building, relationship coach, a guy who's been in the trenches helping people fix what's broken, and then what keeps them repeating the same patterns that actually build something real. So keeps repeating the same patterns and actually build something that is real. My apologies. No surface level advice, not feeling good talks, real work. So if you've ever been cheated on, lost something you cared about, felt like you weren't enough, or just straight up don't understand how to lead in a relationship, this one's for you. And before we get into it, make sure you tap in, follow, subscribe, share with someone who needs it. We're building something real here, and it grows only with you. So let's get into it. Thank you, Mr. J. Welcome to Raw Minds, man. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Erick.
I'm actually excited to talk about this because I think I've had an episode way back, in my maybe first season, really about relationships, but not about coach. I think it was just me and Joey, one of my old co-hosts. So I'm excited actually to really get into this, and I think this is going to be a great conversation But before we do that, I would love to, if you could plug all your socials and know where people can get a hold of you.
Sure. Well, I have a link tree, but my website is, there you go, MrJRelationshipCoach.com. But I do have a link tree, and there's all kinds of stuff out there. I'll tell you what, I say, like, nothing social media that I'm on is ever monetized. So I say that because I don't want people thinking I want you to go to my website so I can make money. I don't want you to go to any of my socials because I get paid for anything. I don't. The whole reason I'm on social media is very simple. I didn't want to die and bring all of the lessons I've learned in life into the ground with me. I wanted to share them to prevent people from having the same headache and heartache that I endured. So if for no other reason, go to my social media and just take advantage of the free resources.
I love that, man. I love that. That's amazing. And I want to say too, like, who are you? Like, please explain to the people who you are. This is how I like to start my episodes. So explain, who are you? Who is Mr. J?
And I am an enigma. Let's say that. But
I love it.
Actually, my niche within a niche. The reason why I do what I do is I am actually what is called a betrayal trauma practitioner. And what I do is I help people help themselves navigate through the very difficult journey from broken trust to now repairing and rebuilding. So that is what I do from a professional standpoint. Now, I also serve as a intrapersonal relationship coach. And what that is helping people with the relationship they have with themselves. Because I always say the relationship we have with ourselves sets the tone and standard for all other relationships around us. I want to digress for 2 seconds.
Please
I was just talking to somebody before this, and they were like, well, my spouse makes me so happy. And although that's great, fine and dandy, the sad truth is that's not your partner or spouse's job. Happiness and joy must come internally. They're supposed to love you, keep you safe, put you first, and hopefully all that adds to your happiness. But if you're looking to somebody else to give you a job, if you gave somebody a job, you make me happy. That's great if the default is you're happy with this person, but their job is not to make you happy. Because
just say, fuck, I'm gonna love this episode. This is great stuff. Honestly, this is the shit that I talk about this in my real life. You know what I mean? So I'm excited. Sorry, I just want to cut you off.
Right.
I'm very excited about this. So let's do. Yeah, sorry.
Right. I love it. So yeah. So because listen, we all have crappy days. And so what happens if we're having a crappy day, maybe a crappy week, maybe a crappy month, maybe a crappy year? Then what? We want to jump from relationship to relationship because this person's quote not making us happy? No. So, but anyways, I digress. So yes, I do help people with intrapersonal relationships, which is the relationship they have with themselves. But my job is to help people, like I said, navigate the very scary journey of rebuilding trust after it's been broken from a
Mhm.
primary attachment, somebody that you depended on, somebody that you relied upon. I always say you might have lost your happily ever after, but we can certainly repair and rebuild and work hard so we can have our happily even after.
How hard do you think that is to rebuild something? Like,
Oh,
if
Eric,
someone's
it is
okay.
by far one of the most hardest, most challenging,
Mhm.
most difficult thing anyone can do at
Yes.
all. In my personal opinion, I think the pain of a primary attachment betrayal is, I mean, they're very, very different, don't get me wrong, but there's no pain like it for different reasons. However, I've worked with many people who have said, Mr. J, I've lost a child and I've also been through betrayal trauma, and I would lose a child again. That's how
Really?
painful betrayal trauma could be.
I mean, people like my grandma passed away from a broken heart because my grandpa died, right? But I mean, I've even you like even that like you could be to the extent like you're sick. Like me, I felt betrayed. I got cheated on in a relationship and I was deeply in love with this person. And I was literally puking. My body was sick.
Oh
And I
yeah.
wasn't even like, yeah, like I was sick. I was puking. I was even having like like I was like having shivers or whatever the hell it's called. I was literally sick. So it's a true thing. Like my grandma died from it's called broken heart syndrome because
Oh,
my
yeah, yeah,
grandpa
and there's
died.
actually a
Yeah.
medical term for it too. It's too long for me
Yeah.
to say now, but there is a
Yeah.
medical term.
Yeah.
Listen, I have had people that when they discovered there was lies and broken trust and affairs and cheating in their relationships of any capacity, whether it's financial, sexual, you name it, having miscarriages, absolutely having to be hospitalized. I always say stress affects us, trauma changes us.
Mm-hmm.
And betrayal is trauma and it changes us. And at first you feel gutted. If you take I don't want to get too morbid, but if you take a raw hunter's knife and you just cut somebody's stomach open and all of their insides fall out, that's what it feels like to discover the person you loved and trusted the most, often more than you loved and trusted yourself, which is a whole nother story. It completely guts you. And one of the things that's difficult is when we are with somebody, we co-create with them. So when
Mm-hmm.
somebody steps out of a relationship, we're not only dealing with the pain and the wound and the betrayal at hand, but we're also dealing with how do we go about even surviving when we've disconnected from ourselves for so long because we've co-created with this person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so how many times do you ask somebody who's been in a marriage 10, 20, 30, 40 years, "What do you like to do?" And they're like, "Well, sometimes we will do that." And I'm like, "Okay, that's
No.
wonderful. That's delicious. Please do we, but what do you like to do?" Because, you're still a human being that has your own, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you haven't morphed into your spouse's desires and we don't do things together. But what are your likes? What are your I say all the
It's
time,
mind
your
blowing.
partner has to be your number one, but they can't be your only one.
Yeah.
That's
You
too big of a job for
You're
them.
blowing my mind because I had a conversation actually yesterday about this, with someone. And I was saying, I was like, you need something for yourself that's going to keep you happy, that entertains you, to do something for yourself, your mental health or your hobby, like a hobby or something like that. You need to do something like that to be able to go to have your space, be able to have fun, get that dopamine or whatever, chase that whatever, and not by scrolling. I'm talking about like doing something that you truly enjoy, something that brings you joy, some kind of purpose to your life, like do this. And then you can like you don't always have to be with your partner. You need that time to have that because then you get stuck on that, and you get lost in that glob of like what am I, who am I now, is this what I like, I forgot about everything. You like because it happens. You start forgetting who you are, and you come just into this blob of two people. In a sense, you still need to have your identity. You still need to have. your time for yourself. And that's what I was telling this person. And that's pretty much what you just said right now. And it just blew my mind, man. It's just crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I say a lot that, listen, we're like gardens. We have our personal garden, we have our relationship garden, we have our this garden, and they all need to be watered. They all need to
Hmm.
be tended to. Now, they're all a part of our life, and we can incorporate a lot of those gardens, but it's also important that we cultivate the individual gardens, that we
Hmm.
have. Um, and it's nice because just on a life basis, a daily basis, it's always nice to go and do what we enjoy, what feeds our soul, and then we come back and talk to that and share that with our partner,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that just really makes even more of the dynamic much more interesting.
Hmm.
But don't get me wrong, we can still morph into each other. If you take a white rose and you cut the stem of it in, like, say, three, and you put a third of the stem in green food coloring and the third of the stem in yellow, and the other one in red, all the petals of the rose are going to completely change. Some petals are
Hmm.
going to be green, sometimes, but then you're going to have a good majority of it that came together. Maybe now it's a purple rose or something. So we co-create with people, and we should. And
Hmm.
if you have passion and joy and zest and a desire, I mean, they even say if you're with a pet for so long, your pet starts looking like you. So I mean,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
absolutely co-create with people. But going back to my job, if and when we ever discover there's a betrayal in our primary relationship, we need to go back to basics. And that's, who am I? What do I like? What do I enjoy? Who am I? So I know how to handle this profound betrayal. And then I have to decide, do I want to lean in and repair with this person? Do I want to rebuild with this person? Do I want to start new with this person? Because there's no such thing. Listen, when we go through a big betrayal, especially in a primary relationship, there's no such thing as building on anything that's existent. No, this is
No.
like the trade towers. They were hit, decimated, shattered, crushed. There's no such thing as rebuilding from that. You need to completely evacuate and eradicate the remnants of the rubble and rebuild something completely new. It's two new people creating something new, not two of the same people building on something that was. No. And that takes a lot of work, a lot
I
of
was just gonna
introspection, and a
ask.
lot of
Yeah.
knowing who the hell you are.
Yeah, deep work, I guess, and long, long time. I was just gonna say that. It's like that's really
Yeah.
hard to do because in a sense you're almost reinventing something, but you're not because you're still there physically, you still have these memories, you have all these, but you're trying to reinvent like the inner part, but still have the core, right? That does that's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. And,
And the person needs to be able to want to do the work too. That's the biggest problem, biggest issue too, is right? Is like,
oh, listen,
yeah.
listen. Let me tell you something. There is no healing, repairing, rebuilding broken trust without both parties. Number one, having a willingness, and number two, working very hard. And when I mean working hard, I mean rowing that boat, rowing and rowing until you feel like your arms are
Mhm.
ready to fall off. And that's where the work begins.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it's funny because I just put on social media. I just put on social media. This is what I shared, Eric. I said, listen, there's nothing that two willing people cannot absorb and move on together if they're both willing. And I gave
Mhm.
some examples. I said, I've worked with a couple where the affair partner broke into the wife's house, poured gasoline on her and lit her on fire, and now she has third-degree burns all over her body.
Oh my god.
But do you know, it's been, I think, 15 years since that happened. Her and her husband have worked this out and they're doing fantastic because they both had a willingness. They wanted to forgive. They wanted to work. They wanted to understand why it happened, and they're doing fine, great, and dandy. I worked with a couple where the husband had a sex addiction and had over 100 trysts outside of his marriage.
Oh, wow.
They're working together and they're
Mhm.
wonderful. But I'm gonna tell you something. I've also worked with couples where after 38 marriage and they have kids and grandkids, she caught him watching porn just once. This was according to their story, just once, and they're now filing for divorce because she said that was my non-negotiable. That was my non-negotiable. So the reason I'm saying all of this is because there's nothing at all that if two willing people want to get through and heal from, there's
Mhm.
nothing that will stop them. At the same token, I also and I support whatever anybody comes to me and wants to work through. I support no judgment on my end. There's also people that there I don't want to say there's no infidelity because a lot of people do consider porn infidelity and
Mhm.
rightfully so because if you think about it, and I have no judgment with porn at all. Now, am I a big porn proponent? I'm not at all. I would prefer there's no porn in any relationship. That being said, that's my personal belief. Professionally, I have no problem with somebody using porn if it's not affecting the relationship, although I'd have a hard time believing it's not. And here's the reason why. If you ask me from a psychological perspective, I don't see a difference between somebody being in the room while two people are having sex or just putting a window in between them and somebody's self pleasuring to watching two people have sex.
Hmm.
What's the difference? If you take that window away, you're in that room. You're giving your time, your energy, your interest, your passion. It's also doing things to your brain. But again, no judgment here. I work with porn addicts all day long. I have no judgment with people that use porn or whatever. But what I'm saying is there's nothing at all that two people that have a willingness that want to work through will prevent them. But if somebody doesn't have a willingness or somebody has a non-negotiable or whatever, then no, it could be anything at all.
Well, that's their boundaries, right? And you need to respect their boundaries at the end of the day, and if that's their non-negotiable and you knew that going into it, and you cross that line at the end of the day, you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. I hate to say it, but it's the truth,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And if that person doesn't want to step forward and, repair that relationship, well, it's sad, I guess, but it's always sad when breakups happen,
Certainly.
But I
Certainly.
mean, it is what it is. But then there's people that want to and will try to do that, right? Like you said, and that's it takes a lot of work. At the end of the day, it does take a lot of work.
It takes a lot of work on both ends. And a lot of
Yeah.
times what happens is clients will come to me and say, Mr. J, she cheated, so fix her. Or Mr. J, he cheated, so fix him.
When
And I'm
it's
like, no, 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 no. You both need fixing, just in
Mhm.
different areas to different degrees, but you both need a lot of fixing and both work. And if you don't see that, recognize it, respect it, and act on it, then there's no healing or repairing.
do you think that like a good majority of the time though, it's an action that created a reaction to like them doing something?
So so here's the deal, and this is I'll go on studies, data, research, and my experience being in this field.
I'd love
Number
to.
one, bottom line, fair start in childhood. That is number one. A fair
Yeah.
start in childhood. And that's very important to understand for many reasons, one of which I'll get into in a second. But that's number one. But I don't know if you ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle when it comes to affairs. And
Mhm.
basically, there's 3 points to a triangle. Okay. The first point is childhood trauma or developmental challenges, stresses, trauma. This is why affairs start in childhood. Then number two, it's where the person is currently. So let's just say hypothetically speaking, well, okay, let me just go there. That's point number two, where the person is currently. And then the third point of that triangle is an external stimuli. So this is what I mean putting it all together. Let's just say somebody has abandonment issues, neglect from child, which brings on poor coping skills. Okay, that's
Mhm.
point number one. Point number two, then they're in a marriage or a relationship where it's not going well. They feel distant from their partner. They feel alone. They feel sad. They feel there's division. And then the other point is the external stimuli. Let's just say it's a guy who feels this way. And then he goes to work and the secretary is, flashing her hair and saying, oh, you're so
Oh, no.
cute. And I love your jokes. That's the external stimuli. That right there is the Bermuda Triangle. And it's the perfect storm. That's where people find themselves
Mm.
opening themselves up to the curiosity of getting their needs met outside of the relationship, which often leads to affairs. So nobody wakes up one morning and says, hey, I want to jump into an affair.
Mhm.
Nobody happy, healthy, and healed jumps into an affair, but
Yeah.
it's definitely the vortex, the Bermuda Triangle, the perfect storm of childhood trauma, where you currently are in your life, and an external stimuli. When all three of those come together, you're at high risk of
Okay.
having an
Can
affair.
it can if there's only 2, like, if there's only 2, like, does it have to be all 3, or can it be, like, 2 and then there's a medium risk? Is that how that works, or
Here's what happens.
Yeah.
So let's just say you have childhood trauma. There might be a 33% chance that that's a possibility. You could have an affair
Yeah.
or do something. If you have the other point, which is an unhappy relationship and you haven't been healed and you're unhappy and you have these needs, let's just say you have a need for validation and your work spouse shows you validation and not your whatever, those 2 points together can equal 66.6% of a chance of an affair.
Okay.
Then if you add it to the, so no, it doesn't have to be all three, but the more that there are, the more of a possibility that there
Closer.
is a good chance that, one of the things, Eric, I say all the time to people is, because they'll say, well, Mr. J, he made me feel so alive, the affair partner, or Mr. J, she brought out in me, whatever. And one of the first questions I ask is, why did you allow that stranger to bring that out in you and not your
Mhm.
partner? Why
Mhm.
didn't you first lean into your partner and have that conversation? Listen, I'm starting to feel a division between us. Listen, I'm starting to feel us separate. I'm going to tell you something, Eric. You've been in relationships. They're not
Oh
easy.
yeah.
It takes a lot of hard
No.
work. I say
Oh
all the
yeah.
time, you have to, at times, get real uncomfortable so you can live comfortably. If you're in a long term relationship, you're going to have to get really comfortable having uncomfortable conversations because if not, well, that's where walls come up. That's where division
Yeah.
comes up. That's where, whatever. So you got to get very comfortable being uncomfortable, having uncomfortable conversations so you can eventually live comfortably.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this
And
even goes down to like even sex acts, which a lot of people don't like to talk about their sex life or whatever. But hey, that's a big part of a relationship.
money too is huge. Is a big fighting thing too. I find that a lot
Money,
of people.
child rearing,
Yeah.
politics,
Yeah.
religion. Yeah, there's a few core,
Yeah. For yeah.
absolutely. And we don't all have to be on the same page with them, but we have to listen and
Yeah.
respect where the other person's coming from.
See, I used to be very unhealthy in a relationship, maybe codependent sometimes, like I had abandonment issues, you know what I mean? I grew up, I had major trauma as a child, until I met Jules, and she was my fiance that passed away 3 years ago on Father's Day. But she changed my whole perception of relationships, and before it would be like, fighting, shutting down, running away, and the walls up, sometimes even just disappearing, ghosting just because it's scared, right? But I met Jules and she changed everything, and I really learned how to talk, and communicate, keep my voice down and really talk. And if I wasn't able to in that moment, I would have to step away, collect myself. Sometimes I'll go outside, smoke a joint, calm down, come right back inside and we'd talk. And it really changed my whole perspective of how to have a healthy relationship, and it changed me around where this is where the idea of it's not me and you against each other, it's me and you against the argument
The
or
problem.
whatever's at hand. And ever since I started thinking like that, man, like I'm in I tried to date after she passed away. It was, too soon, ugly, it was just, but I met this beautiful lady and she fell in my lap now, and that's, what I learned in that relationship. I've pushed it forward, and I have an amazing relationship so far with this lady because of the talking, and it's me and you, and how it is too. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, but like how I think a relationship is, it's never 50-50, never 50-50. Some days I might come home and I only got like 40%, that I can give. So I'm hoping my partner can pick up that extra 60. You know what I mean? And it's going to
Yeah.
vary back and forth, and that's how I think a relationship is. It's
Yeah.
not me and you versus each other, it's me and you versus the argument, and it's like that. It's not
Yeah.
never fair, really. Maybe in some aspects when they're passing each other, but it's, to me, I believe. But I mean, you're the expert in this, so like what do you say on that?
Well, no, listen, you're spot on. You're absolutely spot on. I just want to expand what you just said just a little bit and say in
Yeah.
all areas, because listen, if you're going to be in a relationship, especially long term, there's going to be times you're making a little bit more money than your partner. Then there might be times your partner's making a little bit more money than you, or maybe they're not making any money, or maybe you go through a dry season where you have no income. So then your partner is going to have to give 100% when you give 0.
Mhm.
Then there's going to be times where one person can do all of the housework or 80% of the housework. And then there's another person, let's just say, somebody has a religious or a faith background in their relationship. There's going to be one person who maybe feels stronger and tapped into their spiritual side, who
Mhm.
can carry the family spiritually, and another person's maybe going through something. So absolutely, both people have to be committed to at all times showing up 100%.
Mm-hmm.
knowing very well that's not going to happen, but that's our goal because in different areas, yeah, one day I might only have 35% emotional capacity. Next week I might only have 40% financial capacity. Next year I might only have 20% physical capacity. But if both people, if their goal is 100%, then whatever you're lacking, hopefully the other person is going to be like, I got you.
Yeah.
And then whatever the problem, Eric, is that when somebody goes through a drought where both of them are struggling emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, spiritually, then it's like, I can't give you what you need and deserve because I don't even have it in me to give it to myself. That's the true test of a long-term
Mm-hmm.
relationship. How can you navigate those muddy
And
waters
go through that all and to get through that
and
because
still stay
that's what
connected and not
yeah
disrespect each other and still be in
yeah
love
yeah
or act on love? Because
oh
there's,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, speaking of, I want to ask you this: why do you think that so many men keep on ending up in the same toxic relationships over and over again? What would you say is a big problem from your expertise?
Well, I think people in general
Well,
still.
I it is people, but I'm saying this is men's mental health. That's why I'm just focusing on men, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
people in
yeah,
general.
yeah. Well, you know something? Listen, this is gonna sound pretty disrespectful, but
I can't wait, dude.
universally,
Mhm.
men just need two F's in life: food and blanking.
Mhm.
And that's what it comes down to. Feed me, F me, and men, don't get me wrong, we need a lot more than that. But in general, that's like the universal umbrella. But I think what happens is well, I mean, your question is very deep and it's very good. But one of the
Mhm.
things that unfortunately is I think men are raised in a society where emotions are put last.
Mhm.
So, as a matter of fact, what do we hear a lot of times when a young man starts to cry? Be strong.
Be strong. Yeah.
And that means don't cry, which, by the way, side note, I tell my son that too. I tell my son that too, but it means the complete opposite. If my son is ever going through something emotional, I'll look at him. His name's Luke. And I'll say, Luke, be strong. Be strong. And you know what that means? If you got to cry, honor those damn tears and bawl. If
Mhm.
you need to get in your bed in a fetal position and scream or punch the pillow, that's what I mean by be strong. See,
Mhm.
being weak is dishonoring your emotions. And when we tell boys be strong, really what we're saying invertly is don't honor yourself. And then we grow up dishonoring ourselves and this is where we find ourselves in relationships where now we're anxiously attached.
I was a
Now
product of that.
we're codependent. Now we don't voice what we need. And when we don't voice what we need, that disrespect starts to turn around invertly. And this is where now long term disrespect that we have inside turns to depression. So we do our boys a
Mhm.
disservice when we say, be strong, don't cry, all this other nonsense, whatever. The other thing, too, I will say is this: although there are a lot of resources for men, especially nowadays, and there are, it's about a hair fraction of what the resources are for women. So, just in the past couple years, has there been now homes where men can go to if they've been physically abused by their wives? Now, obviously by their husbands as well, or what have you.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
historically speaking, in the past 40 years, we've had safe havens for women popping up left and right. But there's a lot of men that get physically abused in their
I don't think
relationships.
we even have. I've never even heard of that before here. I'm gonna
Really?
actually look that up. Like,
If you
I
can
have to
look that
look
up
that
and
up.
give it to your listeners, that would be great because
In the description below, I'll have it in the description something, so check it out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now here in where I'm from, it's called the Vera House, and they have housing for men that are in violent partnerships. Because here's the deal too, and it's not a matter of men are weak and all this other. I mean, maybe physically there are cases where men are physically weaker than their wives or spouses or what have you. However, we also were raised in a society where no matter what, you never raise your hand to a woman.
Yeah.
So now we have this woman who has no problem knocking her husband around, but he is
Yeah.
not going to raise his hand to her. Well, what does he do? So he needs to go to a place where he can be safe,
Feel
feel
safe. Yeah.
safe, get some therapy on why is he allowing this? Because I always say we teach people how to treat us,
Yeah.
which that's another thing I'll say. You know, the reason why we get into a lot of these relationships is because we don't know who we are. We don't know our values. We don't know our boundaries. And more so than that, we don't enforce them. Because we can sit back all day long and say, well, I'd never allow this and I'd never allow this. And here's my boundaries and here's my value system. But when somebody breaks it, what are you doing to enforce your boundaries? What are you doing to enforce your boundary, your value system, whatever? And the other thing too is I will say this, and this is universal, but since we're talking about men, a lot of times when we're younger, we have, if we go through something, then we live in a society where we kind of just hold it in. We hold it in. And then what happens is all of that pain and suffering and trauma and stress and wounds we grow with, and we get into an adult and it becomes our costume in life. And then we go out into society, Eric, and we say, well, this is just who I am. And it's not who we are, it's who we've become because we never took off that costume. And so that's why I think it's very, very, I'll tell you, if I were in charge of the world, I would make everybody go through mandatory premarital counseling for 2 years before you get married, or premarital coaching or whatever, because I can't tell you how many times, because I'm a wedding officiant as well. I can't tell you how many times I am officiating a wedding or a marriage of two young people, and I hear them exchanging the I do's, and they have no idea who the I am is. And when you exchange I do's without knowing who the I am is, you know what you're doing? You're just giving the person in front of you a big list of to-dos. These are my needs. These are my wounds. I need you to fix them. And the other person's doing the same thing. And then you have problems. So if you don't work out, and listen, there's no such thing as
Trauma
working.
bonding, almost, so you could say, almost in a sense, trauma bonding, trauma relationship bonding, I guess, or something, I guess you
Yeah,
could say in a
well,
sense.
yeah. Well, the true definition of trauma bond, I hear what you're saying. The true definition of
Yeah.
trauma bonding is
Not
different.
like that, but I'm trying to come up with the proper word. You know what I'm trying to, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, then what you're doing is you are absolutely creating a codependent relationship.
That's it, yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Now, is there any such thing as fixing all your problems before you get into a relationship? No such
No.
thing. We're going to be fighting our challenges until we're 6 feet under, you know? But if you can really start, because I'm telling you something, going back to my field, betrayal trauma, a lot of times the biggest hurdle that people have trying to repair and rebuild or even heal from betrayal trauma, which by the way, side note, I don't really believe you can heal from betrayal. I believe you accept it, you acclimate, you deal with it, and you cope with it.
Kind of like
Because
grief. Same
yeah,
thing as
because
grief.
it's just like grief, and you don't get over grief and you don't heal from grief. You just learn how to deal with it every day
Yeah.
a little bit better. Although there's setbacks to that. You could be 3 months
Yeah.
into it and say, "Hey, I feel good." Then all of a sudden you can walk by a chair in the living room and that person used to sit on that
Or a
chair and you're
smell
on
or
your knees
something.
crying. So, a big part of betrayal is the grieving process. And as we all know, we don't heal from grief. We just learn how to manage it as life goes on and get coping mechanisms with it, and things like that. But yeah, if I had a magic wand, I would make it mandatory that before you get into a serious, committed, legal relationship with somebody, you need to work out some of your issues. Because if not, and I'm going to tell you something, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And if you are not healed, all you're doing is leaving a long line after you of people that are now jaded. Because I say all the time, trauma that's not transformed will be transferred. And not only will you transfer
Oh, I
it to your
like that.
spouse, your significant other, your partner, but now you're also transferring that onto your kids. And then we have generational trauma.
Well, speaking of this, then, like, what do you think the biggest mistake men are making to try to fix the relationships? Then, because you're bringing up the counseling and stuff. Like, what do you think would be one of the biggest things that men
Well, I'm going to be
alone, I
honest
guess?
with you. Men in general, we're big avoiders.
Yeah,
It's like,
I think that too. I could
yeah,
say that definitely. Yeah.
I mean, listen, it's like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. This right here, I feel a little discomfort here. Let me go drink. Let me go smoke. Let me go
Mhm.
do this. Let me go watch porn. Let me go become a workaholic. Let me go binge watch something. Let me go. We love to avoid. Now, I get it. I get it because nobody wants to embrace and walk into pain. I mean, if you see fire, the last thing you want to do is walk into it. You're going to get hurt. However, the only way to conquer your demons is to get lowered into the cave to fight your demons. because then when you come out of that cave, now you're a new person, a new creature, and you've tackled your demons, and you're a new person moving forward where you're not bringing back the bullcrap of your past and all the
Mhm.
baggage of yesteryear. So we got to stop with the avoidant crap.
See, and I always say too is like, you can try to drown your demons, as much as you want in all the liquor that you want to drink, but a lot of people don't understand that those guys know how to swim, and doesn't matter. You can drown them as much as you want. They're just gonna swim right back, and they'll drown you. Like you're the one, right? So I mean, like
Oh,
you
yeah.
said, you have to deal with that stuff because it can get ugly.
Oh, yeah. Because listen, anything that we use to numb, distract, avoid, we will use it, but then eventually it uses us.
Hmm.
So you have to be in control of, and that's not to say that you're not allowed your, guilty pleasures or whatever it is, you know, to calm yourself down or deal with stress. But if you're using it constantly to avoid, like I said, I'm telling you something. If you have a fear of rats, the best thing to do is slowly get lowered into a cave where there's a bunch of rats. You really,
Hmm.
and okay, then deal with that. How am I going to deal with it? And if I can't kill these rats, how am I going to learn to calm my nervous system when I'm around rats? Then,
Hmm.
when you come out of that cave, no matter what you do, you will never be led and guided by fear anymore. You'll be led by empowerment. That's not to say that you have full confidence and no fear of rats anymore. It just means now you have confidence and empowerment if you ever encounter a rat.
Hmm. Well, that reminds me, like, there's this story where, person wants to go and they want to jump out of a plane, and like, parachute. So signs up, the days are coming up and starts getting scared. And then as soon as the day comes, like, okay, shit, I gotta jump out of a plane, hops in the car, starts driving, like, fuck, this is getting real. Like I'm driving to the place, like I'm scared now, and then you get to the plane and you're like, oh, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, but you get talked into still. Now you're sitting up on the plane, you're thousands of feet up in the air, wherever it is. You're looking out and you're shitting your pants. You do not want to, you're scared. But then you jump out of the plane and you had the best time of your life, you know? And you had a great time and you hit the ground, you want to do it again. And a lot of people are scared of the what they've come to in their head, like you're saying that, but when you face it, like you're saying, when you face it, you realize, wow, that wasn't actually really scary. I made it bigger in my head than I really was.
Absolutely. I always say the biggest fear against fear is fear itself. That's it.
100%.
Which
Yeah.
comes back to two acronyms I always say. Fear, you could FEAR, you could either say forget everything and run or face everything and rise.
Rise. Yeah.
Both are fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I've
You
heard
know,
both of those before. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. Lifetimes ago, I don't want to get into it, but lifetimes ago, I was in a pretty successful boy band. I'm not going to get into it. I'll just leave it there. But we used to go around and give concerts in some really big arenas. And I'll never forget one of the first concerts I ever gave, which was in the Borgata Hotel in New Jersey. There was 10,000 people in the stadium. And their applause was so thunderous, it like shook the building. And I remember going up to the manager at the time, our band manager, and I said, Ben, I'm a little afraid. And he said, good, go out there and do it afraid. That's it. So, it's not a matter of, listen, being afraid is human, of course, but that doesn't mean you have to let it rule you or guide you. Go out there and do it afraid. Even a lot of people that are going to be listening to this don't want to get into relationships because they're afraid. Do it afraid. I mean,
Mhm.
hopefully you're not jumping from one relationship to another. I mean, let's make sure it's not
Monkey branching. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But listen, you can't let fear guide you in life. Let empowerment guide you in life, not
Mm.
fear. Because fear, well, it's common sense. It takes control away from us. We want to make decisions from a place of empowerment. Now, that
Mm.
doesn't mean that if somebody doesn't want to jump out of an airplane, I wouldn't say, oh, don't let fear guide you, because maybe what they're thinking is, you know what? Now I have kids and now I'm a little older. I want to be safe. I want to make sure my kid. Okay,
That's
now
common
you're not making a
sense. So
decision out of
that's
fear.
that's a whole different guy. That's common
Yeah,
sense. Yeah, I'm just joking.
decisions out of
But yeah,
empowerment. But absolutely, but
yeah.
but listen, I'll tell imagine the inventions that would have never been invented that make our lives easier today if somebody would have been led by their fear and
Yeah.
not invented what they invented.
Well, I mean, milk. Who went up and just like, oh, I'm gonna suck on the cow's titty. You know what I mean? Thank God. Thank God that guy went up, or woman or whoever, because I love milk. What can I say? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So,
No, absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
know,
So one of the things I just wanted to get back to and say real
yeah,
quick is I
yeah.
was talking about trying to heal after broken trust when we've lost a part of
Sorry,
ourselves.
yeah, yeah. Go
And
on.
the reason I want to say this is because for anybody listening that's going through a betrayal currently or in the future, one of the things I just want to have them be mindful of is there's a term called betrayal blindness. And betrayal blindness is a part of our fight, flight, freeze. It's part of our nervous system. And we have it to keep us safe. It actually keeps us safe. So it's a part of our design. However, it does come back to bite us. And let me tell you why. I'm going to give you an example. If you think of Little Red Riding Hood when she wanted to see her grandmother, she wants to see her grandmother and she had blinders on. She knew there was a scary wolf in the forest, but she wanted to see her grandmother. So she went to her grandmother's house and she knocked on the door, but her grandmother didn't answer her. So something in her body, which AKA is intuition, something in her
Mhm.
body said something was off, but she ignored it. Which this is a caution for anybody listening. Never, ever, ever ignore your intuition. Our brains can deceive us. Our heart can manipulate us. Our intuition will never misguide us. But anyways, she walked into her grandmother's house. Grandma, she didn't get an answer. Her intuition was screaming at this point. She ignored it. She had blinders on. She wants to see her grandmother. Well, then she goes into the back room and she obviously winds up getting eaten, whatever,
Mhm.
depending on which version of the story you read. But anyways, the reason I say this is because a lot of the times we're in relationship, we might not know our partner, spouse, significant others cheating on us. We might not know they're betraying us, but something is off in our system.
Mhm.
Something is, and we're like, man, I can't put my finger on it, but something's just off. And instead of us leaning into it, getting curious and questioning, betrayal blindness kicks in and we just excuse it away and we go on with our life. But what winds up happening, Eric, is when the rubber hits the road and the bomb does go off in our life, and we do discover our partner, spouse, significant other was actually cheating or betraying. Now, all of a sudden, we start thinking, how could I be so stupid? How could I be so blind? Why was I foolish? And we
Mhm.
can't think like that. That's because our natural, normal tendency, which is betrayal blindness, which is a part of our nervous system, kicked in and kept us safe, not to lean in. So
Mhm.
what we want to do is not ever ask ourselves, how could I be so stupid? How could I be so blind? Is that what now? I will never disrespect my nervous system, my intuition when it's trying to tell me something. So never say, how could I be blind? How could I be stupid? Why was I such a fool? No, because your body was doing what it does naturally, keeping you safe.
Mhm.
What you can do is, you know what? I'm going to apologize to my intuition, my gut, and I'm going to make a vow that I will always listen to it moving forward.
And that is so true. Thank you for sharing that. Because I have felt that, and I have felt that feeling inside. You just know something's wrong. And to the point now where I feel it, if I was in a relationship, I know something's wrong and I would just step away. Not even because I just know. And what it is because it's your body. You've been through something like this. I looked it up a little bit for the research, and it's pretty much like your body's being through something like this, your intuition or something similar, and it's giving you those signs, like you're saying, like, hey, something's wrong here, this is not adding up, like look into it, like you're saying, right? So, and like, follow it. I mean, follow it.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on something though. I think it's really bad when people say you talk down on yourself, like you said, like, I'm so stupid, I couldn't see that, because you're putting the spell on yourself, and not bringing good. You're being bad. Your subconscious doesn't understand good or bad if you're saying these words, right? So if you say, I suck, I can't believe this, I'm so stupid, you're putting that in your, and it's spells. That's why spelling is called, or that's why spells are called spelling. Words are words, right? It's spelling, right? They're spells pretty much, and that's why, like, if you watch The Secret or read the book, those good words. Always try not to say these bad things that you say, like putting your words down. Always guide yourself. Say, I'm good today. I'm this. I'm awesome. Not I suck. Just wanted to put that out there too for people, because, like I said, like, spelling is spells. And your words, right? You're putting bad spells when you say bad things about yourself.
Yeah. I like to tell people you need to treat yourself like how somebody that you want to protect you'd want them to be treated. Like, for example, you have a daughter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say she has a best friend over, right? And let's just say your daughter goes to pour milk and spills it. What would you, as her dad, hope her friend would say? Well, it's okay. Everybody spills milk. It's an accident. It happens. Or,
No.
oh my God, are you an idiot? Why don't you hold the cup or whatever? Why should we are our own best friend and we're supposed to protect ourselves? Why should we talk to ourselves any different?
Mm-hmm.
Listen, when we do human things that might be mistakes or whatever, we have to say, you know what? That was adorable.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm only human, or that we need to talk to ourselves the way that we would want to hear somebody that we are comforting and protecting, how you would want them to be talked to. We
Exactly.
need to talk to ourselves the same way, but we
Yeah.
don't. We're
No.
very critical of ourselves.
I mean, you have like everybody has the hardest conversations with themselves, in their heads. Definitely, you will have the hardest conversations if you haven't had it, in your head. But also me, when before, like I've changed my thought now. This is like I brought all this up, right, and did my work. But before, I would be like, "Oh, you're so stupid," and I would say these things, and I would put myself down. And I couldn't believe I was in tears at one point. I think in one of the episodes how bad I talked about myself, Like I can't like I wouldn't even talk to my friends that bad, or my enemies that bad of how bad I talk to myself. So it's true. We are very hard on yourselves. Just take it easy. I said this actually in my last episode. At the end of the day, we're just big kids. Have fun.
We're
Have fun.
tall
Stop.
children. We're all
Yeah.
tall children. Yeah.
Yeah,
One of the
man.
things, I'll tell you something. If anybody listening ever wants to do a little exercise, one of the things that I cannot recommend highly enough is sit in a space with pen and paper, pencil, notebook, whatever, not technology. Sit in a space where you can go back to your childhood and really allow yourself to go there. Don't immediately get uncomfortable and run to a TV show
Mhm.
or run to the food. Sit, allow yourself to go back to your childhood and experience that little boy, and then write a letter to that little boy. Write a letter to that little boy and say, every single time something happens, I'm going to make sure you feel safe, you feel comforted, you feel prioritized, you feel loved. And that's a good way to start talking
Mhm.
to learn to, because it's very hard to tell somebody, don't talk to yourself like that. You should,
Mhm.
no, no. But if they can go back and experience what their inner child experienced and make a vow to themselves I even have people take a picture of their childhood when they're younger and hang it like in their car, in their bathroom mirror. And when they pass by it every day, give that picture a high five. Say, hey, you and me, we're doing this thing called life. We're healing, we're loving, we're doing
Yeah.
high five and vow to always respect that inner child because we're all tall children. Absolutely.
Percent. And you know what? When that happens, then you're gonna have good things in life, like relationships, because you're starting to love yourself and you're doing that work. And at the end of the day, we all crave relationships. As much as you could say, no, I like being alone by myself. We're human beings and we're pack animals at the end of the day. And we all crave some kind of touch or some kind of relationship at the end of the day. I believe so.
No, absolutely. Listen, we are created for human
Hmm.
interaction. We
Yeah,
are. And the other thing too, I just want to say, just to kind of circle back and kind of end what I said,
please.
we date on the level of our self-esteem,
Hmm.
which is why sometimes, and I'm going to sound very judgmental, I don't mean to be, sometimes you're looking at somebody out in public and you're like, how in the world did he land her? Or how in the world did she, whatever? We date on the level of our self-esteem. So if somebody works on their self-image, self-worth, self-love, increases their self-esteem, they're going to meet the same in their partner. So it
Yeah.
would really be beneficial to really do some deep work to help increase your self-love, self-respect, self-worth, self-esteem, because we get into relationships on the level of our self-esteem.
And that's not just like dating relationships, but that's also like friendships, relationships with
All
the
the
people you
friendships
have
and
too.
collectively, we are a part of who our primary
Oh,
circle is, which
yeah,
is why I always say the
yeah,
relationship we have with ourselves sets
yeah.
the tone and standard for all relationships around us.
My
Absolutely.
mom used to always say, "Show me your friends, and I'll tell you who you are." And as a kid, I'd be like, "What the hell does that mean, mom? What do you mean? Like you're just talking nonsense, mom?" And now
Yeah.
as a man, I was like, "Fuck, she's smart," like she
No,
was because
absolutely. My
I
mother used
hung
to tell
out
me that.
Yeah,
Go ahead, sorry.
well, I hung out with, like, a bad crowd, with gangs and stuff, and I went down that route, and I got in trouble, because I was hanging out in that route, and it's not that we were bad people, we just made bad decisions, I mean, some of the kids were bad, don't get me wrong, but we weren't all bad. A lot of us just came from broken homes, wanting to find the love, and finding that we didn't have at home, you know? We
Yeah.
we just weren't bad kids, we just did bad things.
No, I hear you. So my mother used to tell me the same thing. Tell me who you walk with, and I'll show you who you are.
Yeah.
And she also used to say, if you walk with a crippled man, eventually you're going to limp, meaning that people can rub off on you. Do you know, really quickly? I don't know if
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
ever read this study that Harvard did, and it goes back to what we were just saying. Basically, they did a Harvard study where a bunch of people would go up to strangers with hot coffee and say, "Oh, I need to tie my shoe. Can you hold my coffee?" And the stranger would hold their coffee. And they did this for, 100 people. And then at another place at another time, they had cold coffee, iced coffee. And they said, "Could you hold my coffee while I tie my shoe?" Well, 20 minutes after that, each group went back and asked the original people that held their coffee, "This is not a scam. I'm actually in college. I'm doing a research thing. Can you just answer one question for me and I'll give you $20?" It was legit. They told them of a story, a quick story, and they said, "Do you think the person had good intentions or bad intentions?" And do you know 80% of the people that were holding the hot coffee said the person had good, warm, loving intentions. And 80%, well, 79, but 79% of the people holding cold coffee said the person had calculating, raw, cold intentions, which tells you that people can influence us tremendously without us even
Definitely.
subconsciously knowing. So you have to be very careful with who you and listen, I'm telling you something, one of the most challenging things with a lot of people is family. Because with
Mhm.
family, it's like, I mean, we don't gotta be around them, but we gotta be around family. But sometimes there's family we just Lord have mercy. And Mel Robbins, I don't know if you know who Mel Robbins is, but she says this all the time. She's like, family teaches us how to love people we hate.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
so I mean, there's people in my own immediate, not immediate, like, my marriage, kids, but
yeah.
like when I'm around certain family members, I'm like, if we weren't related and this wasn't a family get together, I would not be associated with you in
I
any
tell you straight up,
capacity.
I told my dad to, pretty much fuck off on my birthday, and I haven't talked to
Yeah,
him since.
yeah,
I haven't.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he's too busy with his other family anyways, whatever, you know what I mean, at the end of the day, and I don't want that toxicity around me, it was toxic growing up. I broke the chain, in my generation, I broke the chain, and I'm trying to now bestow that on my daughter, right, and bring her up the proper way and everything like that.
yeah. One of the good questions to ask yourself, if to let your ask your intuition if something is healthy, because I'm telling you something, our brain will always try to manipulate us, and our heart will also deceives us. Because listen, how many times? Well, let me just say what I was going to say. A good indication if a relationship dynamic is quasi healthy is how do you feel about yourself when you're around this person? Not what you do, not what this person does. How do you feel about yourself? Do you feel good and proud and strong and lovable and pretty? Well, this is what I'd be telling my daughter. If you're when you're or not, because that's your intuition saying this person is probably somebody you want to, really think twice or be
Mhm,
mindful when you're around, whatever.
mm,
Or, have a conversation with them because I always say we teach people how to treat us. But absolutely, how many times, Eric, are we in a relationship where we let our heart and our mind make the decisions? It's like, well, they were going through a bad time, that's why they hit me. Well, and I'm just using that as an example,
yeah,
not
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah, yeah,
a
yeah,
personal thing. Absolutely not. But anyway, well, I let them disrespect me because their father just died, or you
excuses, yeah,
know, she just lost her job or he just lost his job, and that's why he lashed out at whatever. Listen, we can give each other some grace and some mercy and whatever, but we have to be very careful, be very mindful not to let our heart and our mind deceive us.
mhm,
We need to really tap into our intuition, which is what I was saying before. If you're ever in a situation where you're out of the situation now and you're thinking, oh my, I don't know if you ever heard of the statement, love covers a multitude of sins. It's a
no,
Bible
never.
reference.
Okay,
But what happens is that sometimes we let, quote, love manipulate us so much that we cover people's wrongdoings with a blanket. But then when we get out of a relationship, now we're getting lifting all these blankets up, and now we start having disrespect towards ourselves. How could I allow myself to be so disrespected? Forget what they did. How could I allow myself to be so dishonored, so ridiculed, so put down? Why was I okay with that? Yeah, I got some work to do on me.
But do you think that these are also sometimes healthy in a sense, I guess you could say, because this is when you learn your lessons too, and this is when you learn yourself and your boundaries, you know what I mean? And this is when you can say, no, I got treated like that in my last relationship. I'm never going to let that happen again, you know? And that's when you start creating healthy boundaries too. So I just want to let people know there, don't think that, you know, there's a yin and yang to it, you know, and you're learning this lesson from this. Everything has a positive and a negative in life. Everything, you name it, it has it.
And this is why I try to encourage people, don't focus so much on the question of how, focus up the question on what. So for example, how could I let this happen? Or how could I be so stupid? Or how could whatever? How about what now? What did I learn? What do I have to apply in the future? So instead of going into the how world, focus on the what world.
Yeah, it's almost like I hate to say this, but it's almost the victim mentality, and not saying that, but like, don't play that victim. Oh, why me? Why me? Why me? I can't believe, you know, or he was an asshole, she was an asshole, it's all his fault. No, it takes two, and don't play that victim mentality. Take responsible for your actions, because it takes two at the end of the day, you know. So
yeah. And to your point, I just want to say,
yeah.
we never get bit by a snake and pick that snake up and keep injecting the venom into our things with his fangs. But that's what we do a lot of times in relationships or after relationships, is we loop and loop and loop. And how could I be so stupid? And how could they do this to me? And why was I such a fool? And, you know, whatever. And I always say other people give us pain, but we give ourselves suffering. So if a snake bites you, don't pick it up and keep injecting the fangs into your veins and arteries.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, step on its head or do something, you know, and then move on. You know, yeah, we love to give ourselves suffering. And I'm going to tell you very quickly, because I don't know what time we have. I want to tell you something. One of the big reasons we give ourselves suffering is because of, I call them mini roommates in our mind. What happens is, and again, a lot of things go back to our childhood. They really do. What happens is when we're younger, we will experience something, and then a roommate will move into our head. So for example, let's just say we experienced neglect or abandonment, right? Now we have a roommate in our head whose name is abandonment and neglect. Millions of whatever. What happens now, all of our life, unless we deal with these roommates, all of our life, they are looking for confirmation bias. They're looking for confirmation because they want to be right. So what happens is we will find ourselves in relationships that we feel were neglected and abandoned. Why? Because our roommates now can say, see, I'm right. I was right. You don't deserve A, B, and C. You deserve abandonment. You deserve neglect. So unless you kick those roommates out and keep them out, you're forever going to keep repeating these patterns and finding similar people.
And if you want to learn how to do that, then hit up Mr. J right here. That's a big, perfect plug for you right there, brother. Right?
Well, thank you.
And on top of that, I just want to put your link tree there too. So everybody, if you want to tell your links, go ahead and plug yourself again there, Jay, Mr. J.
Well, like I said, my website is mrjrelationshipcoach.com. It's one of the easiest, in my opinion, websites on the face of the earth. But again, even if nobody ever wants to see me, hear me, talk to me, just come and get my free resources. I'm all over social media. I talk about tips on trauma, tips on betrayal, tips on healing after betrayal trauma, communication tips in relationships and marriages, boundaries, how to not only navigate boundaries, how to implement boundaries, how to enforce boundaries, really just how to be a self-sufficient human being, because we cannot pour from an empty cup. So the more full our cup is, the more we can give to others. So win-win.
I love that, man. Well, Mr. J, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. I had a great conversation with you, and I had a great pre-conversation. I wish I recorded that as well. We had a great conversation there. So I always say I'm going to restart recording them, but I never do. But maybe I have to start.
listen to your intuition if that's what it's saying.
Yeah.
See, there you go.
Yeah, I have
But
to
thank you,
start,
Eric. I
definitely.
appreciate your time as well.
And and if you ever want to come back, I love having these conversations, especially about relationships. Like we all have had a relationship some way or somehow in this life. You can say that you haven't, but you have. You either relationship with your pen. You know what I mean? It could be a relationship with anything. I mean, you've had a relationship at the end of the day. So I would love for you to come back anytime. And anything else you got new brewing, come back, and love for you to talk about it, please. So
Roger. Thank you.
you're part of the Raw Minds family now. So I appreciate you. So
Thank you. Appreciate that, Eric.
and other than that, everybody else, thank you very much. And we will see you next week. So thank you, and look out for the Legacy Method. It's coming soon. Take it easy. Bye.
Raw Minds. Men's Mental Health. Hosted by Erick. Follow, subscribe, like, share. For the ones we never meet, you're not alone.